We're talking about two things, are we? Balance in terms of equal men and women, or are we talking balance in life? Because I think both of them are equally...
Really good point. What about, let's look at both.
Yeah, because I think that's... I remember reading a report that ASDA did. ASDA obviously stay very close to mums because it's their core target audience, and so it was quite interesting because it's quite a broad section of society. It's not about career-focused women necessarily. But even for their audience, 26% of women, mums, are earning over more than half of the household income. And so it was a really interesting report, and it said the two things that they're looking for is more support from their partners and more flexibility at work, which was interesting because I think what has happened is that the roles of women in society, not just at work, have changed quite dramatically, and organisations and men at home have not necessarily kept pace with that change. And I know we have some amazing men taking on domestic responsibilities, but I think there is an interesting one in terms of balance for fathers and mothers, so they can have that flexibility to take equal share of childcare and their family life. But there's also being a bit more creative about how we build up our workforce. And I have no problem with part-timers at all. In fact, even regardless of whether they have children or not, you can get very experienced, very qualified, very well-trained people on 3-4 days a week for less than, obviously, you'd pay them full-time, but an incredible amount of value from them. So I think it's changing a bit of a mindset in both regards.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just taking that issue for a moment then of the kind of work-life balance thing, you mentioned the issue of what employees want is that sort of flexibility and how do you look at those roles. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say on that, particularly on the work-life balance, before we get into the balance between men and women in the workplace?
I had an immediate reaction when you used the word part-timer.
Sorry, yeah.
Intuitively, because it now carries so much negative weight, and I think sadly diversity as a word is also beginning to attract that sort of it's another diversity initiative. And for those who read Lucy Kellaway in the Financial Times, there's a lot of opportunities for people to take a pot shot at what organisations are trying to do. I think on the balance thing, balance is a tremendously wide word which does cover a whole host of things, and I absolutely think balance should be the word that we should be using rather than gender equality or diversity per se. And I think the balance needs to be at all levels, and I think I missed the speaker this morning from Coca-Cola, but clearly resonated with a lot of people in the room around the fact that you have to have that balance at all levels, and your graduate intake might well be looking good, and certainly in the financial services sector, the more senior it gets, the harder it is to attract or rather retain your female mid-level management and then senior level management. And I think that part of that is the long hours culture that is absolutely prevalent. I remember I sat beside a management consultant about 10 years ago, and she said it was the male conspiracy theory to keep women out of the workplace, this long hours culture. And I went, really? But I've not sort of forgotten about it, and it's incredibly hard. We need more men to shape up and do what they need to do in terms of looking after, being primary childcare people responsible, or even just stepping up more in that secondary role. And I think it's easy to say that men don't. I think some men do, but we need more of that, and we need fewer of the stereotypes that are so prevalent in terms of what people's roles are, whether it's in a marriage or as a parent or in the workplace. So I think balance is a fantastically important word that we should all be really striving for. And it has to be at the top. If it doesn't start at the top, one won't get anywhere.
Anybody else got anything else to add on that?
Can I share our experience? We, the business which I'm very privileged to run is about 1,700 employees. It's privately owned, and we've grown our business through the endeavours of people who have worked extraordinarily hard. But we started with a board with 2 women, a gay man, and me being the token straight man. That board is probably the most effective board, and I sit on 4 boards today because we actually made decisions quickly, and it was very much a team behaviour. And the stereotypes piece, I just don't believe that exists as much as people would like to believe. We're not all Homer Simpson men, who can't actually do anything. Men do get much more involved. I sat with my daughter this morning, who's 9, who said, "Why is there a women's conference?" Because she's fearless. She has no view there's any barriers in the world. And I said the reason this is important is because we're trying to knock down barriers so you don't meet the prejudices that your mother may have, or my grandmother had, or whatever, or my mother had. And she was quite interested in that. But I do believe the stereotypes are being broken down. And if you can run your own business, and I have the privilege of doing that, you can surround yourself with people who don't see sex, they don't see race, and they can actually get on and get harmonious teams working together. The flexibility piece in business is tough. Yeah. And we're waiting for 9 months for a chief operating officer to arrive because she's taking a career break from leaving her last business in December last year. And that's the right thing to do. And the reason she got the job is she's the best person for the job. So, I mean, I think, I'm trying to set an example of the industry that you can wait for the right people, and then people can work in a way which is incredibly effective. But it does start at the top, and it's happening in lots and lots of smaller enterprises now. I've certainly seen it in the last 10 years. I'm less fearful. The biggest question I wanted to ask Margaret Hodge before she left, and I didn't get any chance to, is what happens when you arrive? All of you. When it's parity. What does society look like then? And I think it's a bigger question about looking more further forward. My daughter, when she's 30, will absolutely be in parity in terms of the workplace. It's not long. It's happening as we sit here today.
Yeah,
I'm throwing a lot of things around here, but
I think it's very interesting. I'll come back to you in just one second. But it's interesting what you say because in my introduction this morning I was mentioning that as we're all well aware, at the moment women don't necessarily push themselves forward enough to those leadership roles, which is why a school in Wimbledon held boasting classes, etc., etc. So that's very encouraging that you feel that by the time your daughter is moving forward, there will be a culture that it's perfectly fine and expected for women to step up to the mark. I find that very encouraging. Sorry, Rachel.
I was just going to agree with a couple of really important points there. One was that the next generation coming through don't feel the same way. All of the graduates we take on board have got completely different attitudes. So I think as bosses, it's quite important for us not to lay down any, make it look like there are barriers in any way, but to inspire a culture of possibility and just be aware of the different types of dialogues you may need to have with men versus women when you develop that talent. And also the bit about what does that look like, if there's as many women at work as there are men, could there be as many men at home looking after children? Because I think that's quite an interesting subject as well. My husband is a full-time dad, and he's surrounded by women. And not only that, all infant and primary school teachers are all women, so boys and girls, children, are being brought up in a very female-dominated environment. And maybe mixing it all up a bit might be very, very interesting for society in the future.
I was going to just add that for me it's really simple. Balanced teams, male, female, 60-40, either way, perform better. So it's not just a nice thing to do because we should be inclusive and do the right thing. It's the right thing to do for business. There's a huge amount of research, and I know it intuitively from all the teams that I work with, that if you can get a 60-40 balance either way, male, female, that team will perform better than a team that is not balanced from a gender perspective.
I'm interested why you say 60-40. Why would you not say 50-50? Just out of
I say, well, 60-40 in terms of if you can get to 60-40, that's where you see the performance based on the research. 50-50 would also be amazing, but it doesn't really matter that it doesn't matter to get to 50-50, 60-40 either way. It could be 60% women or 60% men. It doesn't really matter. It's about the direction of travel. And as soon as you hit 60-40, the research I'm aware of shows you that that's where you get a performance differential against lower percentages.
If you're less than 30%, it's very hard as a minority to influence the rest of the group. So in a board of 10 people, if you've got 2 women only, for example, it's very difficult for those 2 women to have the impact that they need to have on the rest of the group. 3 is the minimum, 4 or more ideal, and 60-40 is that window which it will work effectively. Either side of it begins to not work so effectively, and sub 30 is they can't make the difference.
Just before we get into that, because I want to just go into that a little bit more, that this is it's an interesting discussion. Should we just see if there are any questions on what we were talking about first, the whole kind of work-life balance? I'm sure, I can't see you, but I'm sure somebody with a microphone can, or hopefully they can. It doesn't matter who, you can address your question, or just a comment, really. It would be really interesting, actually, just to hear a couple of viewpoints as to how you do handle that balance, you know, that work-life balance and all of that stuff. Anyone here got a husband any women got a husband who stays at home?
Sorry, I just have probably a comment, a question, but one of the things that I've become aware of in life now is that I'm very fortunate with the position I have. I'm respected and looked after, but I kind of want it all, and I want my partner at home to be a man when I want him to be a man, but I want to earn my own money, but I'm quite happy to spend his too. I want to be able to travel and go away and leave him to look after the house, but when I come back I want to take on the housewife role, and I'm just conscious that we can maybe want too much, and we need to also really recognise that balance of the roles that we play. And I don't know if that goes against everything here today, but it's just something that I thought and just wanted to comment on, really.
Anyone like to answer that? Or
Wow.
comment back?
I think it's a great comment, and I think it's down to the dialogue that you have with your partner as to what role you want and when you want it. And I think it's fantastic, and I think you should be upfront. Certainly, my wife was off on maternity leave for 15 years and returned to the workplace as a lawyer and is now general counsel of a small company. Has fulfilled her career potential fantastically. Our kids are 20 and 18, and we've worked constantly through the marriage about who's going to do what and how it's going to be. And one of the adjustments, and I know I'm going to get laughed at for this, is I do all my own ironing, and that's absolutely part of the adjustment. There's no
trust me, there are no laughs, only applause.
And I don't like doing it, but nor does she. But hey, they're my shirts, so get on with it.
Yeah. Any other comments on that? It would be interesting just to hear another, maybe couple of comments as to how it works for you or doesn't work for you, as the case may be. Maybe you should stand up if we can find you with a microphone. Someone over here? Thank you.
Hi, just interested to hear the men's comments on this one. I think when you get to a reasonable position in an organisation as a senior woman, and I'm part-time, I've got a lot of control over my own diary, and I still think it's probably more socially acceptable for me to say I've got to go and pick the kids up and leave a meeting in the middle of it. And certainly I think my husband finds that trickier. Would the gents on the panel agree? And how do we enable organisations to be just as parent-friendly from a men's perspective as we are for women, which I think will benefit us all?
My children are 9, 11 and 12. And my wife keeps reminding me that this is the most important years in their life, particularly the boys. And it is a struggle at times, because there are conflicts between doing events in the evening and actually being with the children at their sporting events and such like. But again, I'm very lucky. I got out of the corporate life 15 years ago. I worked for 4 PLCs, Whitbread, Grandmet, Scotch Newcastle, the restaurant group. There, it was unacceptable 15 years ago to say I have to go and spend time with my family. I'm very lucky. I run the company, and I will go and spend time with my family. Plus, I think the rest of my team know that, so we don't have... I think a point made this morning that the bullying of long hours culture, where people called meetings suddenly at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night, I hated that when I was 35. Now it's intolerable. Now I'm 52. I just won't let that... That does not happen. The only time we do stuff outside core work hours is basically to do with international business, which unfortunately is that does cause a bit of pressure. But I think you've got to be strong. I think men should be strong. I mean, you get one chance with your family. I lost my father when I was 7. I grew up in a matriarch, so I kind of understand both sides of the coin. But I think it's intolerable that people aren't allowed to leave work to spend time with their families. I'm only lucky I can actually affect my own existence.
What does anyone else think about this? Because I think this is really interesting. I don't know whether it's just that we have... this sounds amazing. I wonder whether it really is the reality across everywhere. I'm sure there will be many companies for whom they are still in the dark ages, and they do still expect people to take, their iPhone even when they're going on holiday or whatever, and accept work calls.
And cancel holidays and stuff like that used to go on in the old days, and even.
So, what does anyone else have a comment?
I mean, I think the question was: is it easier for women to say I've got to go pick up the kids than men? I don't know. I've got a very demanding dog, so, and I'm still relating to wanting my man to be a real man comment as well, because I want my man to be a real man as well when I get home. So, just to be clear. So I think for me, so I don't have children. I might at some point in the future explore that with my partner, but I don't know yet. For me as a leader, it's important to make sure I've created the space so that it's okay. So, and sometimes it still requires me to force people to leave and to challenge them. Like, why are you not going? Of course it's okay. And also to challenge other leaders when they subliminally kind of create an environment where it's not okay. So I think I almost see it as a responsibility of leadership to make sure that people know that it's cool. And again, the reason I do it is because I know every single time I've said yes to any request from a man or a woman to do something that's related to their family or their personal life, I always get back 100% more afterwards. I love the fact that people can work flexibly, be it 3 days or 4 days a week or something more. My job, I think, is to try and make them stick to that and not drag into the Friday. They're not working on the Friday, or to coach them about, like, sometimes it's easier to declare a day that you're not working and stick to it. And if I see you online on a Friday, I'm going to send you a message and ask you why, and then force it. And I believe that the more flexible you are with your staff as a leader, the more you get back. Every single person that works for me that works 4 days a week does about 7 days a week's worth of work, and I only have to pay them 4 days.
Right.
So it's brilliant.
Is that more men than women, or is that equal?
It's more women.
Yeah.
I would say.
So the women take a part-time role, but then put in the full-time hours, kind of thing.
More than.
Oh, more
than that.
Women do more anyway. Women are much more effective in the work environment than men. This is not news, is it?
It's not news, but it's still quite nice to hear it. We can know we're wonderful, but it's quite nice to be told again.
But that's why I have to stick women next to men, because it's like, can we just get on with it now?
Yeah. So there's a benefit to mixed schools as well, then, rather.
Yeah, I think that's
I would agree. I think it's really hard for some men to say, I'm going to go to the sports day or going to collect, because the hidden belief for many managers, particularly if they're men, is, why are you doing that? Surely your wife, your partner does that. And I think sometimes that's a manager issue, and sometimes it's just a guy issue that they need to be able to say, look, this is really important to me.
But in general, is that culture changing, do you feel?
It feels like it's getting a lot better. Certainly, we respect family life, and it's tough in the agency world because you do late night pitches. You're talking to China versus the US, so that can be really unsociable hours. So what you've got to do is allow people to be grown-ups and manage their time. So when they haven't got their pressure on their shoulders, or if they know they've got a nativity play or a sports day coming up, you schedule that in, you plan that in as part of your agenda. And it applies to everyone, whether you're running a marathon or, it's your children. It's just that work-life balance, I think, is important. And the business case behind that is if you are unhappy or stressed or burnt out, you're not productive. And we rely as agencies on our people. That's what we're giving to clients. We're giving them talent. So it's important to look after that talent.
And as Jill was saying this morning, you bring all of yourself to work rather than, leaving those bits behind that are not kind of meant to be there. Yeah. Any other comments before we're not really moving on anyway. You're welcome to chip in, but there's another hand at the back there. Have we got a microphone? Thank you. Sorry, it's really difficult to see. We're kind of in the spotlight. I think the lights have been set for the awards tonight. So.
Hi, thank you. My name's Claire. I work for Unilever. I'm the HR director working with Tracy Rogers, who introduced the session this morning. Just one of the things that's making me reflect on the question about, is it harder for men to kind of leave early to pick the kids up or whatever? I don't think we should lose the fact that actually it's really hard for women as well. I don't know how other people feel, but I pick my kids up from nursery and I have to leave at 5 o'clock or just before 5 o'clock in order to do that. And actually it's really hard every single day. I find it hard to do that because you do feel like you're kind of leaving early, and even, you know, with Tracy as my boss, who's clearly extremely supportive of, you know, the challenges that women face and the challenges that everyone faces in the workplace around family, etc. It's still one of those hard things to do, and I think one of the questions is, how do we try and make that easier? Because actually that pressure of, you know, how do you not work 5 days and only get paid for 4, and how do you make it okay for people to go to the kids' sports day is a question, you know, it's a bigger question for everybody. And I think that's one of the challenges. And I'd be interested to hear from the panel on, you know, how we can make that more acceptable.
I think the danger is if you legislate for it, it'll become a too heavy a stick. I'm just thinking, I think it has to be in the culture of the company and a bit give and take. And the word trust, which is the most valuable word in the English language. I don't know. I just think people should be enlightened and expect to get it back in payback time in the future when people have more time. I don't. I mean, we don't. Well, in our business, and I'm sitting on 4 boards. I don't think any of us actually look at clock watching people coming and going. We do look at the quality of the output, and if that's fine. With internet, you really don't need to be in the same place every day, and people should be able to work around it. And you shouldn't feel guilty. I think you should just be very clear with people. The work will get done, but it can't be done at 5 o'clock when I have to pick up my child from nursery. But it has to be your boss who's actually setting the standard, and I can't legislate for her. Where she is.
Before we'll come back to this, I'm sure, but I wanted to ask you, and this is another huge question, but kind of stepping back a little bit, what are your thoughts on the root causes of what we think of as gender inequality? Why? I know in one way it's obvious, but why has it come about?
I think there are a lot of assumptions around women. So around what we aspire to, how ambitious we are, the childcare arrangements, how mobile we are as well. And there are assumptions that are made. If you have a family, you're not going to be able to move around, or you're not going to be willing to. But I also think that sometimes it's because we don't speak loud enough. So we don't actually say, we don't put ourselves out there enough. Women tend to be their own worst critic as well, so you'll be most skeptical of yourself. And you won't tend to push hard enough because you have self-doubt. And we make assumptions ourselves as well, that if we work hard, if we are contributing to the bottom line, that somebody's going to come and give us a pat on the back and say, you're doing really well, and without having to ask for advancement or a role, etc.
I think that there's a danger now that a lot of men, even progressive men in the business environment, have now learned, because they've been forced to learn it, that women are different. And I think they've got, men, and I would put my hand up as well, I've got a long way to go to appreciate the difference and the value of that difference that women add to the workplace. But because men have learned that women are different, and in particular on this issue of self-promotion versus expecting to be recognised for your hard work and your outcomes. So now I see situations where men who see women promoting themselves because they've been coached and mentored to promote themselves explicitly, the men don't like that because they've just learned that women don't do that. And now they're really confused. And now she's a complete bitch, because she's just given me all this, how amazing she is. And actually, I'm kind of scared by it. So you've got these kind of, I find it amazing that I've been through lots of women's leadership events sponsoring women, and I'm with other, I shouldn't really say this, I'll be attacked by the PwC police for this, but I see a lot of established male partners really quite scared of what they can and can't say and do with women. So in one really bizarre situation, a partner said, well, I know that I can comment on her new hair, but not on her new dress, because that might be sexual harassment. And I just thought, oh my God, no wonder you're so useless. All this stuff is in your head all the time. If you like her dress, say it's nice. What's the problem? So I think there's this huge confusion amongst the progressive men, and then you've got all the non-progressive men who still need to learn that it's okay just to have women as your mates and have a laugh and ask the questions that you think are unaskable and just learn and value and leverage that difference. And that men don't have to suddenly cry and women don't suddenly have to be really super aggressive in order that can you imagine how unbelievable that situation would be if men suddenly started to act like they think women are and women start to act like they think men are. We'll have the same problem around the other way again. I also think that sometimes, naturally we recruit and we promote in our own image because we're used to that. There's loads of stuff on unconscious bias. So I think, men struggle to understand that difference and the value of difference from women. I think sometimes women's groups don't help that because they can alienate men and scare them off. Men are quite pathetic, I think, in some cases, at work because they're quite scared and don't know what to say and what to do. So for me, the more women's groups that force men to attend, the more gender balanced groups versus women's groups, where if you're a woman you have to bring a man, the better, because men need to know that it's okay. And there's still a huge amount of men out there that don't understand that, and they're scared. And the stronger women's groups become, the more scared they become. And for me, that's part of the problem.
Interesting. So some of the non-progressive men, as you call them, are there still many of those in a workplace situation who would feel that a woman's job is to be at home, with the kids? What's all this kind of putting yourself forward and trying to have a job?
I think some of the prejudices have just gone underground over the last 10 years. It's not so overt, but there are masses of men, and that's why I'd love to agree with you, Robin, but by the time your daughter is 30, we'll be there. But, our track record to date demonstrates that the pace of change is glacial at the moment.
This is what I'm interested in. If it really is that great, that will be interesting. But I think it is something that, as you say, it may have been pushed underground. Yeah.
I think we touched on subconscious bias. It's massively important, the hidden beliefs that we all have. Every single one of us has masses of hidden beliefs or subconscious bias going on whenever we meet anybody. And the expression that was touched on a minute ago was scary. And in my 9 years at Goldman Sachs and 4 years at Norton Fulbright, successful women are more often than not described as scary or scary bitches by not just the men, but also junior women as well, because they look up and they go, I don't know that I could be like that. I don't know that I want to be like that. And is that something that I aspire to? And that's why you've got to hit the 30% plus at the senior levels of the organisation and the mid-levels to really make a difference.
That's why I think women's groups and strong women just need to, well, they don't need to do anything really, but my suggestion would be to just be careful not to alienate the men. I think you've got a massive opportunity and a responsibility to educate men about what makes you amazing in the workplace. Most men, I think, now would like to hear that and would be up for hearing about that. And to be honest, they can't not hear it. They have to hear it. And they can't move from that. They can't be seen to not listen to that. So they have to hear it, otherwise you can sue them.
Well, now there must be some comments on this, ladies. One question would be then, so how do we be successful, be all that we can be respected, get along with everybody, but not be a scary bitch? How do we do that?
I think the scary bitch is likely to continue to the extent that you have to behave like a man because it's a man's world. And it won't be a man's world if your senior management and the layers below it are not making it a man's world. But until then, many would say, look, this is the way I have to be. And I think it's really important that senior women also are brilliant role models. I think Madeleine Albright said there's a special place reserved in hell for women who won't help other women. And tackling your senior women who don't just say, well, I had it tough and that's how I've got here, and they've got to be enlightened as well to say, actually, I'm going to help this cadre of younger people come through. We talk about the majority, needing to tackle the majority, but actually in many organisations the majority is female. So the minority is the pale, male, stale man that needs to be tackled, not the minority women. And I think female networks can absolutely alienate. And in the beginning they'll give a nice warm place that people can be themselves, but actually the bigger focus is not on the minorities, it's on the majorities, and it's tackling those people in terms of why they have the beliefs they have, and understanding that this isn't just about a legal risk, or it isn't just about doing the right thing and walking with the angels. It's a business case, and it's more effective teams, and it's looking at who your customer base is and saying, we have to respond to that, and that will get the cynical people more likely to listen to go, actually, there's money in it here and we'd better get it right.
It's very interesting what you say about networking. Of course, Lynn was speaking with Margaret Hodge about this and saying that, things have changed. In the last few years, we do have this feeling of the sisterhood. Lynn, would you take the mic just for a moment? I'd really love your opinion on what we're saying here with regard to perhaps more women's networking groups should be inviting men. I'd be interested on your take on that. Lynn's down the front. Thank you.
I was actually thinking about that as you were saying it. I'll sit down. We were referring before in the conversation having Margaret Hodge about more women these days actually putting the ladder down for the young women coming up. There is less fear. And the one thing I will say about men coming to networking groups, women's networking groups, is that's fine occasionally, but we really need our space. And we're not at the point yet where, especially smaller groups, women will open up and really say what's going on for them if there is even one man in the room. And that's the sad reality of it. But I completely agree with you. I think there definitely should be invitations to men to join those groups and be part of it, I don't know, every 3 months or something. But giving women the space. Women still need their own space, that's the thing. But I do believe it's a changing world. I do believe that the more senior women are now realising that they don't have to be the mean bitches that they will put, that energy they put out, which was completely unnecessary. And I think that's changed in many industries, and I hope we're going to see it completely disappearing after this conference, basically.
Thank you, Lynn. Would anyone else like to comment on this? I'd be really interested in any other views on, networking is something we'd be very much talking about today. So this is interesting.
Hello, I'm Alison, and Robin's my boss. So I think what's really interesting
make it a good one.
is that
make it good.
No, we've worked together for 13 years, and we've had conflict along the way, but it's never been about the women's agenda. I think we have made the agenda absolutely equal at Yo Sushi, and we've been allowed to do that because we're a small company. So Robin is right in that we don't see it as a huge agenda, but I've got all the women in the Yo Sushi team here because I want to sort of informally make sure that the people who are coming up behind us are really looked after. Whereas I think PwCs, Unilevers of the world have to have a very structured women agenda because of all the history, the size, and I think we're much luckier because we're making our own agenda. And that's really what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison.
Very good, very good. Excellent. Any other comments? Does anyone have a different experience?
Can I just throw a very quick one?
Sure, yeah, sorry.
I'm not sure, the other way around. The thing that inspires me the most is things like The Apprentice.
Absolutely.
My head
absolutely. There's your scary bitch.
So anybody but my business behave like that, male or female, I would just be distraught.
Yeah.
And that does nothing for women. And I'm sorry, just throw it as a little...
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much for pointing that out. There was a question over here. Yes.
Hi there. May I just say thank you to Robin for not only talking about and championing diversity, gender diversity, but also for airing his opinion on The Apprentice, which I concur with. I think we're at a very interesting time From my perspective, my organisation, Merlin Entertainments, we have a gender diversity agenda. Our senior leaders are completely bought into that agenda. Our women are being developed to deal with or to develop confidence and to feel that they can apply for that next level role. My experience, however, is that there are attitudes out there within our business which I'm personally trying to challenge and change. But some of these attitudes come as a result of our senior managers and our middle managers who have wives at home, who were brought up by mothers who were at home. And I think a lot of it is about continuing to champion as an organisation. A lot of it is about developing the confidence for women to challenge these attitudes. But I'd be interested to hear from the panel as to your experiences and any suggestions that you have in dealing with these attitudes that are still very much prevalent. We call them non-progressive, or you've referred to them as non-progressive. They're almost a little regressive as far as I can say.
I think you have to stand up and be counted, but you have to be careful that you don't then get labelled as, you know, Mr. or Ms. Political Correct, and you drive things underground. I spend a lot of time calling people out, but you have to do it in a way which gets them to see why it's not appropriate, rather than just being, you know, the lone voice on the hill. And I think it's not always easy, and particularly if a comment is made that gets broad acceptance in the group or gets a laugh, then I think it is. And I do a mix of calling out people publicly and then also privately after, you know, so that there isn't that sort of public humiliation element to it. But I think you absolutely have to stand up. The last thing you should do is sit there and nod visibly while inside you're seething, because I think you have to stand up and get other people to stand up as well. I think if you're too vociferous, however, and I've seen this, certainly some women are too overtly focused and aggressive about it, and that actually puts them then into a box of, little box of, difficult and don't go there. And I don't think that's helpful either. But sometimes it's intensely irritating, and you have to work out what the right strategy is in order to take it on and have the conversation behind the scenes around, why it's just not appropriate and why that sort of thought process is so damaging. It's interesting, many men get it when they've got daughters. And in my experience, those who have only daughters and look at them wondering where they're going to grow up and what workplace they're going to get into and would they want their daughters working in that workplace, means they get it a bit more quickly. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but I do think we've got a long way to go.
There was one more question here. We could just have that. That'd be great. Thank you.
I don't know if this may have been mentioned earlier, but I come from a fairly big family. I won't tell you the numbers, for people might fall off their chairs. But I grew up with a large number of brothers, which I think was a huge factor for me. Secondly, I grew up with quite a few sisters. Interestingly, our mother was completely home all the time. Father was a farmer, so never there. Yet, out of the whole family, it was my sisters and I who were all the entrepreneurs. My brothers all quite good jobs, but all stayed within working worlds, whereas the girls, all four of us, ended up with our own businesses. So for me, I think there's a huge impact in your upbringing. Huge. So, full-time home mother, full-time working father, yet you look at the changes in the family of where we all sit. Majority of girls moved away, went abroad, worked. Most of the boys stayed at home in Ireland. I think we can make the big influences from our upbringing and also from helping to get men involved in these groups. I think this conversation wouldn't even happen in Sweden. I think there's a brilliant opportunity to use maybe the Swedish ways to help us educate us all and the men in the world of the glass ceilings with women to help. But that's, I think, the upbringing and the influences of family and that really makes a massive difference.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I find that fascinating because, you know, obviously family is absolutely important. So if we're going into almost a new paradigm, then how will it look in the future? You know, in 30 years, 50 years hence, how will that look when the next generation, who, let's hope you're right, and, you know, your daughter feels completely equal, actually pretty much everyone will have come from a family where either both parents have very successful careers, or, you know, it's going to be very different, isn't it, for the future?
Well, there's a problem. There's a million boys right now are growing up without fathers. That's a big worry.
It's another whole debate.
Be worried, be scared, because they won't understand women, or they'll understand the mother, but they won't understand how to behave as men as well. There's quite a lot of complex issues in our society, I think, down the track. But women have a seminal, you know, there's an inflection point here, I suspect, the next 10 years, where you can actually set the agenda and you can actually help men, I think, feel more comfortable with their own sort of sexuality and who they are, what their place is. It's a really big issue. But there's a tipping point coming up, I reckon around 10, 15 years. I'm not a futurist, but you look at societal patterns, it's coming. But women need to help men get through this, because I think there are a lot of very, I would say, sensitive men, are sensitive about the subject, and some are plain scared.
I think the environment you're brought up in, I absolutely agree, is key. And I look around at my brothers and sisters-in-law, and they've all got young kids, and it's not uniformly all kids being brought up to believe they can achieve whatever. You've still got a lot of sons going off with dads, daughters going off with mums. Oh, daughter won't want to do this. That's, you know, we'll go off and do this sort of stuff. And it just, you know, my wife and I just look out and just go, why are they stereotyping so early on? Why are the mums allowing that to happen? Why are the dads allowing it to happen? You know, dads and lads go off and do stuff, and, you know, and it's not that even playing field. And I've got two sisters, and my wife's got two brothers and a sister, and we were all brought up to believe that whether you were a boy or girl, you can achieve whatever you can achieve. It isn't stereotyping into, well, you're more likely to go into this, or he's more likely to go in to do that. And I think the influence of parents is massive. And I think for either kid not to have a mum or a dad is a big impact. And boys need their dads, definitely.
Any other comments on that? Yes, thank you.
Hello. I just want to pick up again on the networking part, if I may. Is that I teach people how to network, which is a bit of an odd career, to be honest. And what I find is working with both men and women is that both genders actually struggle with this whole subject. I think it's just a mindset as to a lot of chaps just get on and do it, and a lot of women sort of tend to hold back. However, sort of saying that, I think the most appropriate thing for most people is to be unique and true to themselves. And a lot of women would sort of say this, you know, I want to be authentic. Now, I think men are authentic, and they get on and do it. They sort of work the appropriate route. And I think women just need to sort of find a way that's right for them. The individual needs to find a way that's right for them to sort of say, well, I'd much rather talk and build relationships with you this way. And if you want to do it that way, that's also fine. So I don't go down the pub so much, but I do go and take people out for teas and coffees, as Margaret Hodge was sort of saying earlier on. So I think this is about come to terms with who you are as an individual, your way of wanting to communicate and engage and build relationships. And all of those ways are absolutely fine. So if I want to do a pub, I'll go to the pub, but it's not my preference, but I'll do it from time to time. But I'd much rather take someone out for a coffee and a bun, you know, and both of those are just as effective, and I don't feel excluded, and I don't think people will feel excluded if they find a unique way and an authentic way that's right for them. And that's what I would encourage people to do. And then I think you start losing that scary bitch type sort of thing as well, because people want someone who's useful. You know, and if you're useful to somebody in whatever shape, then people will be grateful for that connection. So I just wanted to make those comments.
I wouldn't agree with most of what you said, but I wouldn't agree that men are generally more authentic networkers. I would say men are generally less authentic networkers. They just got used to it playing the game earlier. So I wouldn't.
But in a way, women have been amazing networkers in the community. Yeah. I mean, when you're bringing up children, you automatically build that network around you of other mums talking over the garden fence. And, you know, Mums Net and Net Mums is proof to how women like to get together and make things happen. And it's very, very real. It almost needs to be brought into the workplace as well. Whenever something needs to be changed in the company in terms of, you know, doing some more fun events or anything like that, it's always a woman coming to me to say, let's do this, let's do that. So they're real drivers of change and organisational change. And I think we should just encourage women to come forward a lot more in that regard, as well as take charge of their own careers, you know, much more.
But I think women are less likely to seek help in advancing their career. Yeah. So they will innovate more, but if they view friendships very differently to men. Whereas men will have no problem going up to somebody saying, I'm going for a job in your company, can you give them a recommendation? Whereas women will feel, I'm going to use my friend if I do that.
I mean, I see that, but I don't think it's universal. I think actually if we start to, and I think we're being forced to, start to just reconsider everyone as human beings. And everybody, I know hundreds of men who feel in a minority, whether they might be gay, they might be from ethnic minorities, or they just might be shy, or they just had a difficult childhood, or they've just been labelled as something. And I know an equal amount of women who feel the same for different reasons. For me, the reality is we're all human beings. We all woke up this morning. We've all probably been to the toilet once already, and we've all probably eaten something. And we'll do most of that tomorrow. If we can start to appreciate who we are uniquely as human beings, we'll all start to appreciate each other's uniqueness more as we appreciate our own. And then that's true for men and women. For me, success will be when I can line up 5 middle-aged white PwC partners and have them all see how different they are from each other. Then they will see how different women are. They'll also see how different the lesbian is, and the gay bloke is, and the black guy is, and the Indian woman, and the person who didn't go to university, and the person who's on a higher apprenticeship, and all the other people, and the wonderful uniqueness that we all have by default by being human beings. So for me, it's about society, I think, is forcing us to break ourselves down back into simple human beings. Because we don't interact with, so my clients are not universally white guys with a wife at home who were brought up by a mother who was at home. It doesn't exist anymore. So none of our clients from a business perspective, if we talk about this from business, are the same. It's just not, the society isn't like that. It doesn't work anymore. So organisations can't just kind of hold on to some old stereotypical world. They have to reflect society. And because society is their client-based, whatever their clients are.
So I think perhaps you've just answered what was going to be my question. No, it's good. It's a great lead into the final question, because we haven't got much time, which is the big one, which is what will it take then to bring about true gender equality? And perhaps you've kicked us off nicely by saying, let's ensure that we do have that reflection of a true society and that we're all human beings. Is that fair for your kick-off?
Yeah, I think we've to just remember that everybody's different. We've all got unique strengths. We've all got weaknesses, but who cares about them? Because someone else is good at that stuff. We should focus on our strengths. We should explore our strengths. We should stop getting wrapped up in what we're not good at. Stop trying to conform to stereotypes. Stop trying to fit in, and start respecting and valuing our strengths. And being strong about it. I think we should empower ourselves with what we're uniquely good at, and then let someone beat you down with that. And bring it on, I think there are some simple things we can do. So I decided a couple of years ago that I would put my own metrics on myself of 60-40 gender balance. So as a leader, I felt I can do this. I can take responsibility for myself. So when I recruit, when I mobilise a new project team, and when I promote or I'm involved in any of those conversations, I will explore what the gender balance is. So it's a really simple thing that I can just do as a leader. And I think, there was a comment about, large firms like PwC need women's groups, and I totally buy safe space, and I agree with that for all groups. But also, our large organisations are made up of individual human beings, and they're made up of leaders as well, at all levels, and those leaders have a responsibility to do stuff, and it's simple little things that you can do that make the biggest difference. So for me, I decided I would set an objective of 60-40 at recruitment, promotion, and team mobilisation, and for me it sparks off lots of stuff.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to have a pop at that question? What will it take to bring about true gender equality?
At risk of being stoned, I'll be controversial, and I think although it's an evil necessity, it is necessary, and that's quotas. And I think we've just got to get on.
Sorry, that's
quotas. Just got to get on and do it, work its way through. Yes, there'll be lots of people who'll say, well, da-da-da, but I think there's no way we'll ever get to where we need to get to unless we legislate for it and make it happen.
It's an interesting one, the quotas one. Everyone has a point of view on that one, but the first time I heard that, pride said, oh, no way, but we need to have more role models for women, and I think the only thing that's going to things aren't changing quickly enough, and the only thing that's going to do that, if it's not quotas, then companies have to set themselves targets on how many women on the workforce, and making sure they're making it through to the board. Coca-Cola had an amazingly inspiring presentation this morning about what they're doing as a big organisation, and I've heard a similar one from P&G where they've achieved 50-50 at board level in the UK. So putting in place programs to make sure that is happening and female talent is being nurtured all the way to the top, I think is really important. And it doesn't mean you have to necessarily have a special female program versus men. In our agency, we just have this 100-day plans. So you have a regular dialogue with your line manager, and you're working together as a team more. And it really works for women, because women don't march into the office and say, I need a pay rise, I want a promotion. But if they have a conversation with their boss regularly about what they want out of their jobs, where they want to develop, what their ambitions are, that really works. And it also brings out some of their needs and wants for the line manager as well, which is helpful.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I do think it's twofold. So it's the corporate and the government side, so perhaps the quotas, but it's also as individuals. So we need to recognise our strengths, promote our strengths, find a mentor or a sponsor, somebody who's going to put their neck on the line, who knows your abilities and your qualities. So more than just somebody who's going to coach you, somebody that will, as was mentioned earlier, who will network for you even when you're not in the room, etc. So there's a lot as individuals that we need to do, as well as more overall in terms of the corporate or the government view.
Thank you. Would you like the last word?
Well, I hate rules, so I hate quotas. But I sit on two other boards. Sushi are in a reasonably good place, and that's because the team have done it. The other two boards I sit on are Marston's, which is a 2,000 pub business, 850 million turnover, one woman on the board out of 10. I'm on a mission to increase that number, and not because I want to follow the rule, but I reckon we need about 3 on there to make a difference and reflect who our customers are, for God's sake. Caffè Nero, I sit on a board there with 550 coffee houses. There's one woman on the board out of 5. Again, I'll try and get that up to 2 or 3. So, I mean, I can only affect what I can affect. And I just think it's all about role models. I truly think people who are inspired by other people will get there. But it is a meritocracy as well. You've really got to perform well, girls, because, you can do it, and you're better than most men in sort of positions. And if you're determined enough, you'll get there. I think the glass ceiling has been broken. I'm an optimist. You're a realist. Maybe you're a pessimist. But I'd hate to be living in your world. I like living in my world, which is where I can affect a difference for other people. And that's what we want. And there are some fabulous women in our industry as well coming through, in the hospitality world and the leisure world, who are extraordinary, who are going to be enormously powerful in the next 10 years. So they need to deliver for the rest of their team as well.
So any last-minute, absolute burning questions? Anybody?
Hi.
First of all, thank you very much for this afternoon. It's been very interesting. It's more of a comment than a question, and today various people have spoke about giving females confidence. I also think we need to look at the younger males who maybe sit at junior, mid-management levels. So I find it really disappointing when I see my male friends and colleagues who, there's no sexism there, very equal, and they say, yeah, I'm really proud of you for your promotion, and it's great, but then the moment a senior person comes in, the younger males are very quick to lose those beliefs and change to kind of bow down to the senior people. So I think we need to look at how we can support the younger males in mid-management positions as well, to actually give them the confidence to stand up and say, no, actually, I think it's okay for my female colleague to be part-time, or for my male colleague to go home early to pick up the kids from school. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts were excuse me, on that, and how we can get the younger males to, stand up to what they do believe.
Man up.
Man up.
Pardon?
Man up.
I think you've got to keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, that you've got to be who you are, that when you are who you are, when you're yourself, you perform better. If that means that you need to have a flexible work pattern and that helps you to perform better, that's great, whether you're male or female. And I think there's a responsibility of leaders in particular, if you're managing anyone, to constantly reinforce the same messages all the time. And if you hear that kind of nonsense from guys, then you've got to deal with it on the spot and nail it, because it's just ridiculous. People that work flexibly, usually in the time they're working, are much more efficient. In fact, I would say absolutely, categorically, they are more efficient than people that work 5 days a week. It just is true, because they come in with more of a sense of purpose and wanting to make stuff happen. In some ways, it would be better if everybody worked 4 days a week, then we could have much more fun at the weekend, and we get a lot more done at work. I think we've got it all wrong, to be honest.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've found this absolutely fascinating. I hope somebody's been taking notes, because there were some real amazing gems there. So really, thank you so much, all of you, for some really fascinating insights and for your views. I don't think we've got time for anything else, sadly, so that just leaves me to say thank you very much to Robin, Andrew, Susan, Andy and Rachel. Thank you.